Mrs. Mrs. Cortino, may we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Flanagan.
Here.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Here.
Mrs. Patterson.
Here.
Mr. Walker.
Present.
And Mr. Fowley.
Here. I designate Regina Patterson as the temporary chairperson.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Nominations for President of the Board for calendar year 2023. It is recommended the resolution listed below opening the meeting to nominations for the office of President of the Warren City School District Board of Education for calendar year 2023 be approved as submitted. Whereas statutes require board members to elect one member of the board to serve as president. Now therefore, as temporary chairperson, I declare that nominations for the office of President of the Warren City School District Board of Education for calendar year 2023 are now in order. Are there any nominees?
I nominate Julian Walker.
Are there any more nominees? Are there any more nominees? We will now vote to close nominations for the office of President of the Board for the calendar year 2023. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Fowley.
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson.
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
And Mr. Flanagan.
Yes.
And the motion carries. Vote election of President of the Board for calendar year 2023. It is recommended the resolution listed below to elect the President of the Warren City School District Board of Education for calendar year 2023 be approved as submitted. Whereas Julian Walker has been duly nominated to serve as President of the Board. Now therefore, as temporary chairperson, I call for a vote to elect the President of the Warren City School District Board of Education for calendar year 2023. Again, the nominee is Mr. Julian Walker. May I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Flanagan.
Yes.
Mr. Fowley.
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson.
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
I guess so. Yes.
It still would have carried. So the motion has carried. Mr. Walker will serve as our president for the calendar year 2023. Mr. President, you are now presiding.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Probably sits a little higher than I do. You're taller.
Page 4.
All right. Nominations for Vice President for the Board for calendar year 2023. It is recommended the resolution listed below, opening the meeting to nominations for the office of Vice President of the Warren City School District Board of Education for calendar year 2023 be approved as submitted. Whereas statutes require board members to elect one member of the board to serve as Vice President. Now, therefore, as President, I declare the nominations for the office of Vice President of the Warren City School District Board of Education for calendar year 2023 are now in order. Are there any nominations?
Mr. President, I'd like to nominate Patty Lamperos.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations?
I move that nominations be closed.
Okay, a vote to close the nominations of the office of Vice President of the Board of the for calendar year 2023. Mr. Fowley is Moved. Is there a second?
I second.
Ms. Cortino, can you please make a roll call?
Yes. Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes. The motion carries. Congratulations, Ms. Laperos. Oh, we have to vote on it, so we got to move to the next one. Congratulations on being the only nominee.
It's not done yet.
Okay. Vote election of the Vice President of the Board for the calendar year 2023. It is recommended the resolution listed below to elect the Vice President of the Warren City School District Board of Education for calendar year 2023 be approved as submitted. Whereas Patricia Lamperos has been duly nominated to serve as Vice President of the Board. Now, therefore, as President, I call for a vote to elect the Vice President of the Warren City School District Board of Education for calendar year 2023. And again, the nominee is Patricia Lamperos. Ms. Cortino, can you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes. Now, congratulations. Okay. Item 9 on page 6. Ms. Lamperos, can I have you read that one?
Sure, absolutely. Establishment of times, dates, and location for regular meetings for calendar year 2023. It is recommended the resolution listed below establishing board meeting times, dates, and location for calendar year 2023 be approved as submitted in Exhibit 6A.
Second?
Ms. Cortino, if you can please call the roll.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes. Oh, the motion carries. Ms. Patterson, if I can have you read item 10, page 7.
Determine board committee appointments for calendar year 2023. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding board committee appointments for calendar year 2023 be approved as submitted.
Second.
And those committee appointments will be Patricia Lamperos and Julian Walker for athletics, John Fowley and Patrick Flanagan for financial advisory, Regina Patterson and Patrick Flanagan for board policies and guidelines. Legislative liaison will be Patricia Lamperos and John Fowley. TCTC board representative will continue to be Regina Patterson. Are there any questions on the motion? Or just points for discussion?
Do you want to discuss the possibility of student achievement liaison?
Does anyone feel there's a need to discuss that position?
Well, I think we should, being that I don't think we've come to a decision whether we want one or
Yeah.
not.
And it's on
That's
the
true.
agenda. Yeah.
The Ohio School Board Association recommended the position of student achievement liaison to communicate with the superintendent and his representatives as far as student achievement. Mr. Shiro, do you have any recommendations?
My opinion on the topic is that, the legislative liaison has very specific work and communication that goes back from what happens in Columbus and OSBA. It's communicated out to the board members here at the meeting. Specific to the student achievement liaison, it appears that this is a position that is doing work between OSBA, especially Capital Conference, the Student Achievement Fair, and items like that. I don't believe it is a direct tie into student achievement activities going on in the district. I believe it's more about promoting the activities that are going on in the district through OSBA. So from my standpoint, the work of the Student Achievement Liaison does not have a direct link or correlation to the work and success of student achievement. It is more or less communicating on the 3 days in November at Capitol Conference the work that is being done or through other means. So that would be ultimately what the decision from my perspective, the board would have to decide. as we communicate here at the board meetings, we have student success and student achievement, promotion, discussion, and conversations. A lot of curriculum work is done here at our Board of Education meetings through the superintendent's report. As you can see, also evidenced by our calendar for the January, February, March, and April meetings, they will be on the road at our buildings. So each one of our pre-K through 8 buildings and their teams can discuss the work specific to going on in their buildings. With that said, it's a decision of the board if you wish to fill this position or if you wish for us to continue to do our promotion as we do with OSBA.
Thank you for that.
That was a long answer.
But it made sense. We appreciate it. Keeps us informed.
If I could, Mr. President, if I could just add in, I do believe that that is the whole purpose of the Student Achievement Liaison is to ensure that the student achievement is at the forefront of board meetings, et cetera. And I think that our district does a phenomenal job at that already.
I can agree.
mean, there is not a meeting that we have where we don't discuss some type of student achievement. The crowning point of that, of course, being at Capitol Conference, whenever they have their little events where you're able to see exactly what the students, are doing. So yeah, I mean, I think that I'm not sure that it's really needed to assign someone to it specifically, but I certainly would, favor whatever the majority of the board's wishes were.
Yeah. It sounds like it's a little redundant if we have a legislative liaison. If there's something that arises in that area, which is really just if we wanted our students to perform or to be on the agenda in the Capitol Conference, we would work towards that. That could be taken care of by other means. It seems like a redundancy and something that's not really needed the way our board is set up. Does that seem to be the general consensus? Or are you okay?
I agree with that. I do.
All right. If that be the case, can we have
I think we had a first and a second already.
We already had a first and second? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Ms. Cortino, can you please call the roll?
Yes.
I didn't write that down.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
and Mr. Walker.
Yes. And the motion carries. Item 11, page 9. Mr. Fowley, can you please read that?
Finally, the members of the board are reminded, under the provisions of ORC 121.22, that members of the board are prohibited from making any decisions obligating the board as a whole or with public funds when acting outside a regular or special board meeting.
Thank you for reading that, Mr. Fowley. The next page, too, though. That was the end of the previous one. It was a little weird.
Go to
We're on
page
page
9,
9.
John.
Page 9.
Ohio School Board Association membership. It is recommended the resolution listed below authorizing membership in the Ohio School Boards Association for the period January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023 be approved as submitted.
Ms. Cortino, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson, Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan,
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
Yes, the motion carries. Item 12 on page 10. Mr. Flanagan, can you please read that, please?
Ohio School Boards Association Annual Conference and Business Meeting. It is recommended the resolution listed below, appointing a delegate and alternate to the Ohio School Boards Association's Annual Conference and Business Meeting, be approved as submitted.
And for this year, Ms. Lamperos will be our delegate, and Mr. Fowley will be our alternate for voting purposes. May God give them strength. Can we get a second?
Second.
Ms. Cortino, could you call the rolls?
Yes. Mr. Flanagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson.
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
Yes, and the motion carries. Item 13, page 11, Ms. Lamperos.
Warren City Schools Athletic Council meetings 2023. It is recommended the resolution listed below establishing meetings for the Warren City Schools Athletic Council meetings for the 2023 calendar year be approved as submitted.
Can we get a second?
I second.
Ms. Cortino, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Item 14, page 12. Ms. Patterson.
Retain legal services. It is recommended the resolution listed below to retain legal services to be approved as submitted, and that's Ennis Britton, LPA, Harrington Hoppy, and Mitchell Ltd., Manchester, Newman and Bennett, and Rotzel and Andres.
One more.
Oh, it's one more. Squire, Patton, and Boggs.
Second.
Ms. Cortino, could you please call the roll?
Yes. Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Item 15, page 14. Mr. Fowley.
OSBA Legal Assistance Fund. It is recommended the resolution listed below joining the OSBA Legal Assistance Fund for the period January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023 be approved as submitted.
Ms. Cortino, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson? Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Item 16, page 15. Mr. Flanagan, please.
Authorization to employ temporary personnel. It is recommended the resolution listed below authorizing the temporary employment of personnel be approved as submitted.
Second.
Ms. Cortino?
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Item 17, page 15. I'm sorry. Ms. Patterson. Oh, sorry, Ms. Lamperos. I'm sorry.
Authorization to fund signatures. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding authorization to fund signatures be approved as submitted.
Is there? Thank you. Ms. Cortino?
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson? Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
And Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Item 18, page 16. Ms. Patterson.
Payment of bills.
Please do.
Yes. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding payment of bills be approved as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Absolutely.
Ms. Cortino?
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
And Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Item 19, continuing on page 16. Mr. Fowley? Oh, I'm sorry. There is no need for executive session. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And Mr. Shire, we don't have anyone signed up to address the
There is
board?
no public participation at tonight's meeting.
Okay. Oh, well, okay. Making sure you knew that. Good job. If that be the case,
I motion to adjourn.
all right. All right, Ms. Cortino, call the roll.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carried. Good night.
Thank you.
At 6:22 p.m.